Let's be friends.
Welcome back to SicEm365 Radio. Paul, Catalina, Craig Smoak. David Smoak back tomorrow. Joined now by Buck Rising, 104.5 The Zone in Nashville to talk Tennessee Titans and their move of Julio Jones. Buck, thanks so much for joining us. This was something that from the very beginning that seemed to make the most sense, but the Titans got put on the back burner because there was this rumor out there that there was a big deal, gigantic first-round pick to be had for Julio, but turns out that that wasn't the case. How did this come about with the Titans, and did they just kind of lay in the weeds until the Falcons came back to them?
Well, I did read, and thanks for having me on, guys. I appreciate it. I did read Albert Breer's reporting today in the Monday Morning Quarterback about there not being a first-round pick on the table, and that directly conflicts, of course, with Diana Rossini's report saying that there was, in fact, a first-round pick on the table. So everybody is kind of up in the air as to what actually happened there and who this mystery team that would be willing to put that kind of compensation out there for a 32-year-old receiver. But, yeah, Titans sat on their hands. They realized that there was not any kind of a market, really, for him outside of Seattle doing some sniffing around, doing some due diligence, and ultimately Atlanta had to move this guy simply to get him off their books and to sign their rookie draft class, to be able to move on with all the other financial work that they're having to do between Matt Ryan, Grady Jarrett, and a bunch of other deals that new GM Terry Fontenot has had basically placed in his lap after Thomas Dimitroff got fired. So the Titans waited it out. The rest of the NFL looked around and said, well, there's not really a desperation play for another team here because of all of the talented young wide receivers that are currently in the NFL right now. And ultimately the Titans end up getting something that's it's not a luxury really at all. It's something that they desperately needed because they had a substantial amount of losses on the offensive side of the football to replace.
Well, Buck, that was what I was going to ask you in terms of, I think most people say, hey, even if you got 17 wide receivers, you still want Julio Jones. But roster-wise, where does he fit in? Where does he make the impact, and why is this so important?
I mean, it's important because they lost 45% of their receiving production in Corey Davis going to the Jets, Jonnu Smith to the Patriots, and they cut Adam Humphries, who is now one of the new wide receivers for the Washington football team. So they had to do something, and the guys currently on the roster, they have a fourth-round rookie in Des Fitzpatrick. They, of course, have A.J. Brown, but they were one injury away from having the worst group of wideouts in the NFL. So A.J. is the wide receiver one here in Tennessee. Julio will be 1A, and everything else runs through Derrick Henry, which is a nice luxury to have because now defensive coordinators are going to have to make a judgment call on who they want to take away and how they're going to try to stop the other two. Turns out that's a much more difficult proposition than anybody else is going to. I mean, most other teams, really outside of the Kansas City Chiefs, and you could probably make the argument for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in the NFC, there's really not a threesome of skill position players like that right now in the league.
Does he also help offset, because tight end is a big question mark for the Titans because he is such a big red zone threat? Does he help offset that because they're going to have to piece that together with some young players, aren't they?
Well, I would push back on the idea that Julio Jones is a red zone threat. In fact, that's kind of the biggest knock on him is that he doesn't necessarily produce touchdowns. He's more of a decoy in that area, and that's why Calvin Ridley's numbers have been so good in Atlanta. Tight end-wise, yes, they are going to have to adjust what they do because no team ran more 12 personnel, two tight end sets than the Tennessee, or one team in the NFL ran more two tight end sets than the Tennessee Titans last year, and that was under a different coordinator who obviously is now the head coach of the Atlanta Falcons in Arthur Smith. So their game planning is going to have to change. This team will have to evolve on that side of the ball. I think Derrick Henry is still very much going to be a featured portion of it, but certainly what they did last year with keeping guys in to help with the run blocking scheme when they max protect and run two-man routes down the field to try and take advantage of the play-action passing game that Ryan Tannehill has become, frankly, ruthlessly efficient at. Anthony Firkser is a nice player. He's basically a slot receiver, and he can't help you when it comes to blocking. He's not a versatile tight end. He's going to have to adapt his game, or otherwise they're going to have to adapt what they do around him, and that's basically what Todd Downing, the new offensive coordinator, is tasked with here in Tennessee.
Buck, I would imagine that Tennessee fans are rejoicing, the last 24 hours with the Julio Jones news, but double-digit wins for the first time since 2008 last year, going 11-5. What's just kind of the feel, the kind of optimism amongst Tennessee fans right now with this Titans team?
Oh, certainly. I mean, Titans fans think they're going to win the Super Bowl right out of the gate. And frankly, and I appreciate that. They are allowed to feel that way today, certainly. And yesterday when the news broke, that's the kind, I mean, it's that Christmas Day type feeling where, especially when you've already had Christmas in free agency and you landed Bud Dupree. They've now three separate times landed a pretty massive free agent. Jadeveon Clowney last year, obviously the experiment failed, but this is a new trend where the Tennessee Titans have become a little bit of a destination for players who are out here trying to ring chase, which is shocking to anybody who's followed the Tennessee Titans or certainly the last decade of football that they've had down here, substantially improved under general manager John Robinson and Mike Vrabel. From an objective standpoint, I don't think that Julio Jones is the difference between the Tennessee Titans winning the Super Bowl or not, but it certainly makes their lives a hell of a lot easier in their pursuit of it. The question is, can you maintain the health of the player, because he only played 9 games last year and is starting to get up there in age.
Does he also help the fact that they can maybe move Josh Reynolds into a more natural role? I know he's only there on a 1-year deal, but he was productive in LA, just not the fourth wide receiver there, and Tennessee gives him a better opportunity.
Certainly. When Corey Davis left, we talked to Josh Reynolds, who I know you guys are familiar with, down there in Texas, and Josh Reynolds felt very comfortable about the idea that he would be able to fill into that Corey Davis role. Now, what people think of when they talk about Corey Davis as the second wide receiver here in Tennessee is that he just naturally slotted in on the outside, when in fact that wasn't the case. Corey Davis took more slot snaps than any wide receiver on the roster last year, and ironically enough, Josh Reynolds had more snaps in the slot than any Titans wide receiver in 2020 playing for the Los Angeles Rams. So it allows them to do, it seems, what Josh Reynolds might, as you alluded to, might be a more natural fit for. You don't have to worry about him carrying the load if A.J. Brown, who is coming off 2 knee surgeries in the offseason, suffers any kind of a setback or is in any kind of way diminished as he kind of rehabilitates and recuperates from those offseason surgeries. It's a really, really strong 3 wide receiver set at this point. And the rookie, the 4th-round pick out of Louisville, Des Fitzpatrick, gets a little more time to kind of develop into something, whereas otherwise he would have been kind of thrust into the fire right out of the gate.
Has the defense improved enough to where this Julio Jones move will not go in vain, at least a little bit, for them to get at least another level in the playoffs to where they're contending for a conference title?
I mean, they were historically bad on that side of the ball, without question. They gave up a higher percentage of third down conversions than any defense in the history of the sport last year. And the guy who oversaw that defense got a promotion out of it, which, we're still trying to figure out how exactly that works down here in Nashville, or I guess up here in Nashville for you guys. The defense needed an oil change, and Robinson went out and basically rebuilt the entire engine. The secondary has been blown up. They went out and stole a couple pieces from the Indianapolis Colts, who had one of the best defenses in football last year, to put Danico Autry next to Jeffrey Simmons, who is a bona fide superstar at this point in the NFL at defensive tackle. Bud Dupree is going to take some time to come back from the ACL that he tore in early December. So that will be a waiting game, but certainly it makes the life a lot easier on players like Simmons and Harold Landry, who is in a contract year out of Boston College, to kind of, certainly, they could trip and fall into as many sacks as they got last year and made the playoffs. 19 for a playoff team ties a low. They cannot be worse on third down, and if they are, they don't deserve to be in this conversation to begin with. The good news for Shane Bowen as the defensive coordinator is that they can't get much worse. So even if they are just slightly above the 29th best defense in football, as they were last year, turns out you can still win your division. How much further in the playoffs you can get is an entirely different matter. But they seem to have taken the steps that they needed to make that difference.
Buck Rising, 104.5 The Zone in Nashville. Buck, I was just up in Nashville. I'm asking you this question because it didn't bother me. It was just something I was curious about. If I were to move to Nashville and start a pedal bar or some sort of cool bus bachelorette party thing, is the market too flooded? Or if I had a good enough, unique idea, would I make it?
I think that's an excellent question because the market is wildly oversaturated here. Just the other day, our radio station is downtown off of Lower Broadway, which is, of course, the main strip. And I was watching a pedal tavern that, well, it was really a tractor that was pulling a hot tub that was encased by plexiglass. And, a handful of bachelorettes were being thrown shirts and doing what people most normally do on Bourbon Street in New Orleans when things are tossed their way. So, you can try and top the Music City Party Tub, as I believe it's dubbed, but we have all manner of tractors, pedal taverns, party barges. It's really, really going to be a tough thing to break into, but maybe I've seen stranger things down here, so I think you should shoot your shot.
I would worry about the Music City Party Tub guy having to fight off lawsuits for the staph infection that inevitably comes from that hot tub.
I'm quite certain that's where COVID started, to be honest with you.
Buck Rising joins us here on SicEm365 Radio. Buck, thanks so much, and we'll have you on again if there's any Titans news.
Without question, enjoy the rest of your afternoon, boys. Thanks.
Yes. Buck Rising, 104.5 The Zone in Nashville. Joins us here. Great stuff there. Craig, I'll tell you, you would really enjoy Nashville as far as like...
I've been there.
Yeah, you were there. You were there. But I mean, like, it's a cool place, right? I mean, it's a cool place, except that the market is flooded with, pedal taverns.
I think Nashville's fine. It's cool for what it is, but it's very... glossy.
I think you would like the outer parts of Nashville.
Yeah, which I can say I've been to all these cities, but I've not really been to these cities because the stuff I'm interested in is not going and getting drunk. I don't drink, so like that does nothing for me. So Nashville, basically all I saw was bars, and so that does nothing. Meanwhile, I was actually looking around and I was like, oh, that's a cool museum I would like to go to, or and just didn't have time to. So yeah, what I saw was kind of the superficial, glossy downtown. Every bar is named after a current country singer practically.
Yeah.
Like every one of them's got their own like joint down there. It's cool. If you're a country fan, you'd love it. If you're a drinker, you'd really love it. If you like New Orleans, you'd probably like Nashville. It's not New Orleans, but it's not that far off really in what it's becoming. I mean, as far as just a drinking and walking and, kind of touring around type city. So I know it's grown immensely over the last few years. And I also know a lot of people in Nashville kind of feel like the people in Austin of like, we've kind of turned a corner here to where we're not quite what we were at one point in time and sort of lost our identity a little bit. Yeah, that's certainly happening, I think, in Nashville a little at this point.
All day long. I'll tell you, if you're in Nashville, all day long, no matter where you are in downtown, you will at least once every 10 minutes or so, if not in more frequency, hear, man, I feel like a woman on one of those buses.
I was surprised. Like every bar was named after a country singer practically. Like it was like, this is Luke Bryan's Outpost, and this is Kid Rock's, whatever it was, and this is Miranda Lambert's Muscle Factory, and it was like that was basically the whole strip.
Kid Rock's Tax Shelter.
Yeah, like it was just all these random things. But it was cool. I don't even remember what restaurants we went to, quite frankly. I know we didn't go to Kid Rock's place. Yeah. That's like a 3-story place.
Yeah, it's huge.
And very easy to hurt yourself there because like they've got the big balconies and everything. But I've heard stories of that place getting a little crazy. But yeah, Nashville's cool. It's just I have read many articles or heard many Nashville, I guess, natives say that, kind of the same things that some people who are originally from Austin are saying right now. Like it's great, but it's a little bit too much.
Yeah, our good friend Stu Myrick that does a little work for the Horn down in Austin. We were in the Cowboys press box one time, and I can't remember who it was. Just a friend of mine that works in another market. And so this is Stu. He's from Austin, and they're like, "Oh, I love Austin." And before it could the words came all the way out of his mouth, Stu goes, "Don't move there."
Yeah,
don't move there.
I
don't do it.
To Austin right now.
Yeah, don't move it. We have too many people. Just stop. That's how Austinites, real native Austinites, feel about what's going on.
It's
in
Eastern.
Austin.
It's Eastern California.
It
It's basically
is.
what it is.
South
in
Portland.
Austin. Yeah, I mean, well, let's not bag on Austin too much. Portland's a dump. Yeah, no, I know there's a lot of influx, and hey, why not? Texas is a great place to live, and so people are taking advantage of it. I just hope we don't lose our Texas spirit amongst all these new faces moving in.
Yeah, I agree with you, Craig. When